So maybe you've been wanting to become a data engineer for a while, but you've been a bit lost as to where to get started. And so today I'm going to help you fix that by sharing with you what I think is the best roadmap in 2026 to become a data engineer. No shiny tool, no useless parts, only the essentials, building strong foundations and getting skills that will actually get you hired. So let me walk you through the 4 phases I've identified for that. Let's get started with the first phase, which is building the basic. I think this is something that is fairly often skipped now, especially because there are so many data engineering tools, and many people now start learning Spark, clouds like AWS, Google Cloud, of the things, but I think that's the absolutely wrong way to start. You need to build some foundation to start with, and for that, data engineering, at the end of the day, it's still a part of software engineering, and so you need to build strong, solid base skills. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you to learn Node.js or things like that. I think that's, a bit more if you're interested, but I don't think it's a core skill to have. You need to learn Python and SQL, basically. Those are, I would say, the main things that you should know really well. And for Python, I would say there's not only should you know the programming, how it works, the language itself, but you should also learn some specific packages like NumPy, Pandas, Jupyter, because those are essential data packages to know. For SQL, I would not recommend a specific SQL language. I don't think it matters that much because they're at the end of the day still pretty similar, especially when it comes to the basics. So just pick one. I guess Postgres is pretty easy and pretty interesting and also still quite used in many companies, so maybe I would pick that one. But what matters is just learning SQL in general. And then the 2 other core skills I have written down here are Bash and GitHub. Obviously, I think those should be a bit less in-depth learning as you're doing for Python and SQL, but they're very essential tools, especially if you want to work in a company. I mean, every company has some Bash scripts that you need to work with, and every company is going to use some sort of versioning, and GitHub is kind of the place to get started. One crucial thing on that step is do not use AI to learn how to code. What I mean is, if you're learning Python, I don't want you to open your VS Code and have your Copilot help you write the code. Make sure you disable the autocomplete, because you need to learn the syntax, so you can't rely on AI. One last thing on that part is remember to take notes of all the main comments that you're going to use or functions, and just overall notes of what you learned of those languages, because they will come in handy as you actually build things with what you learned. You're going to need to look up some parts again, and so if you just take notes, not only is it going to help you memorize the things, because every time you type you're closer to remembering for next time, and also it's just you're building your own bank of notes, and it's very useful to go faster when you code, because I did that sometimes, not taking notes, and then I'd spend so much time Googling things that I had already Googled before. So just write it down and you'll use it forever. I know there are also a lot of cheat sheets that exist out there, and I think they can be very useful, but only later. I still want you to focus on your learning, and the only way to learn is taking your own notes, following your own courses. Really doing things by yourself is how you learn to build that strong foundation that is extremely crucial, especially for Python and SQL. It's very important that you understand deeply those languages, because those are things that will be tested in interviews mostly. Not of the fancy tools, it's a lot of time algorithmic test or SQL optimization and things like that. So it's very important to build those skills now. Okay, let's move on to our phase 2, experiment. So the goal here is to actually apply what you learned in the previous phase. And what I mean by that is actually building projects. What I recommend is minimum, obviously I encourage you to do more, but at least one small, simple project that you host on Git, just to get familiarized with applying what you learned on your own, not by following a tutorial, but building your own thing. And then very important, you should have a complex project that reflects a bit more things that happen in companies. So a DB, a backend, and a UI that are fully hosted and accessible. This is a very important part, because if you apply or if you're trying to get recruited at some point, you need stuff that is publicly visible, especially if you're not in school. That means you need some sort of proof of work, and that's what your GitHub is. You're building your portfolio in this step, so it's very important that it's publicly available. And here, I don't want you to think that you have to build something perfect. That's not the goal here. You're just trying to show what you know, and it's okay to not know everything, but really show that you understand especially more of the business side and things that are important to get things shipped. And it's also something to start with, but the goal is that this is a phase that you iterate over, and at each iteration you kind of grow the complexity of your projects. And so this is just the first version of it. Don't try to make something impossible, because you're gonna discourage yourself if you try to build something too big on the first try. So just start with something fairly accessible for your level and just iterate and make it more complex as time goes on. And I will say, I think this is the funnest part of this roadmap, because that's where you get to do a lot of your own things and just projects you have in mind. I'm sure if you're someone who likes to code, you've had things that were like, oh, I wish this tool exists, and this is exactly what this phase is for. It's for building them. I would still recommend not using too much AI there. You can a little bit, obviously, to speed things up, but still remember that your goal is learning, so you need to struggle a bit and you can't rely on AI every time there's an obstacle that comes in your way. So try to be reasonable and really prioritize your learning. By the way, if you're interested, this roadmap will be available in the description for download. I'm just right now walking you through it so you have all the details, but if you want to download it to remind yourself of all of the steps, it'll be available at the first link in the description. Right now, let's move on to phase 3. So I think this is the part that most people are gonna probably like the less. Personally, it's a phase I really liked in my learning. I know we can get all the info from AI, but I think reading really forces you to be focused on one topic and get a lot of information. Is a relatively actually fast time if you're a fast reader, but I think it's a really, really good thing to practice. And also because so many people are already relying on AI, it's a really good way to learn in-depth things and architectures and why we choose some things, especially in business. Is going to give you example of how it works in company, why you make certain decision. Things that obviously you can prompt AI to tell you that, but here you don't have to think of all the prompting, especially because you're learning, so you might not know all the questions to ask, and this just gives you all the information that you need. So I've put 4 books up for recommendation. I'll be honest, I've only read 3 of those, but I do plan to read the 4th one. They're pretty known books, especially I really like the designing data intensive applications. They're definitely not easy books. They're technical books. You're not reading fiction or a story, but they're really, really good books. And especially if you're still building some things or working, they'll really help reflect on your own projects and what you've built and what you can do to make it better. So some core concepts that you should know if you want to be a data engineer is what are ETLs, ELTs, the different type of schemas, orchestration, how that works, and warehouses. I think those are the main things. Obviously, those books will teach you even more than that, so that's even better. And here, same advice that for the basics. Please do some active reading. What I mean by that is if you have a physical book or an ebook, you can highlight stuff and take notes. It's really, really important because while reading is a very good way to learn, it's also quite passive if you don't decide to take notes and try to highlight things that you think are important. So please do it that way so that you actually remember lessons that you learned from those books, and also just to keep adding to this collection of notes that you will always need to go look into as you get more projects and more experience, to make sure that all the knowledge from those books, you keep it in a way that's condensed, because obviously every time you need something, you're not going to read the whole book. They're pretty big books, some of them. And we are getting to the end with phase 4. So what do I mean by expertise? So at the start, I told you to not go straight to one shiny tool that you should learn, but I do think it's something that you should end with is picking specialization, sort of, because obviously most jobs are not going to be like Python and SQL. They're going to be either more cloud oriented, or maybe they're going to use dbt, Databricks, all of those tools. I don't advise you to learn all of those because I don't think it's the right way to do it, because here you really need to build a deep understanding of those tools. So pick maybe one or two that you're interested in, because this is probably the type of jobs that then you're going to apply to. So pick something that you see yourself doing every day. But the difference is, in this step, I actually encourage you to use AI, but it has to obviously stay a tool and not become like a crutch that you rely on. But I think here, because you're trying to build sort of like a real life experience, you are going to use AI in most companies. So it's important that you can show that you know how to use it the right way. But I also don't want you to put too much pressure on this step. It's okay to pick an expertise and in a year or two change directions, or even as you get a job and your position evolves, it's completely okay. But I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that you might do this for a while. So for instance, I'm not the biggest fan of cloud, and I kind of always stayed away. I mean, I know the basics, but I always stayed away from positions that were cloud heavy. But I really like GPT, so I'm leaning more towards that. That's just, you know, a way to make your life more enjoyable by picking something you do like and you're interested in. And here, make sure to add more to your portfolio that's related to this specific tool, because again, you're going to apply to positions that use that tool. So you want to show that you have real experience with that tool. And with that being said, that's it for our 4 phases. Again, the PDF is available for download in the first link in the description. I hope you follow this roadmap. I genuinely think it's a great way to get into data engineering in 2026, and I will see you in the next video.